the United States Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Where are we going with this?
Well, it's almost a natural consequence, the action of the U.S. President, Donald Trump. And it's quite interesting to know that the history of Israel itself as a country has been embedded in the letters that spell the word Israel. I could mean Iraq and Iran, S could be Syria, R could be Russia, A there could be the Arab countries, E, Egypt, L, Libya. Well, that's at the side. But the history of Israel seems to have been spelled by the very letters that form the word Israel itself. They've had all sorts of relationship, but one relationship that stands out there is the hostility, you know, since its creation. It has suffered with countries around it, especially, you know, Islamic countries, who actually see Israel as actually a deep problem where amidst them. And the crusade have always been that they want to wipe out Israel from the map of the world, and that they have no right, they are colonialists, they are occupiers, and they need to leave. So, but this all have been managed over the decades. The US, the United Nations, and all the other, you know, stakeholders in the matter have actually, you know, managed it for 70 years now. Jerusalem has actually been the melting pot, yes, of three serious civilizations: Muslim, Christian, Jewish, and all sorts of people, you know, occupying this place. So there's been some form of diplomacy around Jerusalem. And because it's a sticking point, whether you like it or not, in the history of that relationship between the Israelis on one hand and the Palestinians. So everyone has tried to manage it. You know, some form of, you know, peace agreement, some form of diplomatic arrangement has been hashed out in the past to maintain relations, saying that, well, we do not want Trump or the United States to meddle, that they will understand and agree if the United Nations, you know, takes over that role in trying to...
do the United Nations have the capacity to mediate between the two countries or the two nations? Because, as it were, the United Nations has a lot on its plate already.
It has a lot, but of course it's also making some comments regarding this, you know, saying that, well, they will have to study, they have to look into it. I think they've been very outright in their condemnation of what has just happened, because Jerusalem has actually in the past provided, or the diplomacy that has happened these 70 years or so has actually been the basis for which the United Nations have been able to establish some form of, you know, relationship, some form of diplomatic ties between, you know, very tense, a very tense situation that has remained tense over the decades. So the United Nations itself might be able to play that role, because as it is now, OIC leaders, especially Palestinian leaders too, are not prepared to listen to the United States anymore on this matter, having blatantly taken sides, as it were, in the issue. And the question to be asked now is, what role will the United States play henceforth? Because it still has a lot of role to play in it. It has said that, well, it was going to continue some form of, you know, effort towards, you know, some form of peace in the Middle East.
Now that the United States seems to be backtracking out of this, or perhaps maybe taking sides, this is going to be an opportunity for a country like Russia to actually wade in. Russia, under Vladimir Putin, at least for the past how many years now, more or less has been taking a leading role. We saw in Syria, for instance, taking sides with Bashar al-Assad, and now they've declared Syria free of ISIS, you know, terrorists. And this will be a perfect opportunity, you know, for Russia to actually also make a statement in the world. Is this...
And standing right behind him, who represent the evangelical trust of that whole announcement. The fact that, you know, Trump was fulfilling a campaign promise. Trump was also actually appealing to a base that is evangelical. And all over the world, especially those who believe in what Trump has done, there's been a lot of reading, evangelical, theological reading into that. And Mike Pence represents that particular
Now, the voices in the Middle East have been unanimous. Now, they don't want Jerusalem as a whole. They want the world to join them in recognizing East Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine. How are they going to achieve that?
Well, they've started already. In fact, there was going to be a day of rage. Where they were calling on Islamic countries all over the world to. But then again, it's this reading of whether it's Islam, whether it's a Christian thing, it's a very, very wrong reading to the whole situation. But whether I like it or not, anytime it comes to Israel, it presents that kind of reading to the rest of the world. And so what they will do is still continue the message of saying that they reject Trump's recognition of the what is now called the New Jerusalem, and that they also have a stake in the matter. They will continue to push for a two-state. But beyond that, they are beginning to actually say that they do not even want the existence. That has been the old cry, that they don't even want the existence of Israel.
Two-state solution.
Yes, and that Israel itself has no right to be in this place, that they are occupiers and that they need to leave and they need to get out. This has been, whenever they want to rally their people around them, this is the call that Israel is the adversary there. Israel is the enemy, and Israel needs to be wiped out from the face.
I think you take
Business, an initiative of Greenfield Assets Limited. There is nothing as symbolic as a door. It shuts to protect you and opens to give you much more. Everyone wants to succeed, not just count pennies. When life gets tough, I remember a few things. Difficulty and struggles are part of what life brings. Your strength comes from the support around you. A true friend believes in what you do, there to hold your hand through any weather. I found my partner, and we walked through doors together. Diamond, your bank.
Yeah, welcome back. You're still watching the Rise News now with me, Michael Kelly. Well, Theresa May is set to arrive in Brussels for a key EU summit on Thursday, having suffered a damaging defeat in Parliament over a central piece of Brexit's negotiation to deal another blow to May's already fragile authorities, while several lawmakers from May's governing Conservative Party sided with the opposition to insist that any deal with the EU require an act of Parliament before it can take effect. Well, Peruvian President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski is in hot waters over decade-old payments he received as a consultant to a giant Brazilian construction company at the center of the Latin America's biggest graft scandal. Kuczynski said in a televised address on Wednesday that he will meet with a congressional committee investigating payment from Odebrecht to dozens of political leaders. The former Wall Street investors say that in 5 decades in business, he earned his compensation honorably, and as a public official, he never favored any of his former clients. Lawmakers on Wednesday presented documents provided by Odebrecht that shows a consulting business owned by Kuczynski received $782,000 in payments between 2004 and 2007 from 2 consortiums led by the Brazilian firm. Indonesia's top court has ruled against petitioners seeking to make gay sex and sex outside marriage illegal in a victory for the country's besieged LGBT minority. A 5-4 majority of the 9-judge